You know, Obama was probably the best campaigner, you know, that I've seen in my adult lifetime. Campaigns are sales, marketing, and communication. And nobody has done it better. But governing is something else. It is something else. And what they set up in that campaign, and we teed them up to do it, was they created this empty vessel, hope and change. And everybody projected their own change onto this candidate, the ones who ultimately voted for him. And if you ask two of them in a row, you won't get the same answer, if you can get an answer. You know, one of the, it was frustrating, but one of the entertaining things to do with Obama supporters in the fall was ask them what change they expect to get. Well, most of them wouldn't even answer. Well, you know, this Bush guy isn't working. Well, you know, he's not running this year. They couldn't explain a position. They couldn't even explain what they wanted. They couldn't explain what they expected. Now, thankfully, some of them are a little bit upset about it. But when you get that kind of what I'll call fractured mandate, you know, what kind of policies do you end up with? That fracturing is in part why I believe you're seeing the Rahm Emanuels of the world and Nancy Pelosi's shoving things through as fast as they can. Because if people get time to look at what they're trying to do, as we're seeing with the health care, I mean, it's a disaster, and they can't get it through. Look for budget amendments to accomplish a lot of what they want to do on the floor, without committee hearings, without town hall meetings, because their agenda, when people understand it, is so contrary to the founding principles, the American people won't stand for it. Again, as Reagan said, they are the reservoir of wisdom in this country. And when that stops being true, then we're done. Then we're done. Are we over that point yet? You know, it's one of those things we won't know without getting past it and looking back. In my view, our duty isn't to win, it's to fight. We have principles worth fighting for. And this year, fight, let's see, how many days? 69, 66 days. 66 days. I can do anything for 66 days. That's all we've got left this year. What's very interesting is that Virginia's in a position, because of what's going on in this country, to lead America again. There's nobody watching Virginia closer than every blue dog Democrat on Capitol Hill. And they're a little nervous about it. Virginia went Democrat for the first time in 44 years, and they want to know, is this sustainable? It's a measure of Obama's staying power politically, and the Democrats' staying power. And they're looking ahead, of course, to 2010. They're starting to have the problem that we've had, and that is priority one is re-election. It's not principles. It's not an agenda. It's re-election. That's not the right first priority. Now, if they want to be wrong about the first priority, I'm okay with that. But we got wiped out in 08 and 06 because our folks made that their first priority way ahead of principles. Principles? How do you spell that? Is that A-L-S? L-E-S? We lost so badly because Republicans abandoned their core principles, not because Democrats came with an agenda that was terribly attractive.
Right.
Go back to my Obama comment. He didn't really lay an agenda on the table, not with any specifics. But we had so abandoned our core principles, our voters stayed home. You know, for all the media hype about voter turnout last year, in 2004 in Virginia, it was 72%. In 2008, as a targeted state, which was a new experience for us, it was 74%. Not much different. Not much different at all. Now, the media would have you believe otherwise, but it wasn't much different at all. What was different was who was in that 74%. A lot of conservatives And Republicans just stayed home. They just stayed home. You know, in my Senate district, before he died, Paul Weyrich lived in my district. He's one of the founders of the Heritage Foundation. And I was door knocking one day and came to a house and I said, oh wow, this guy's name is spelled just like Paul Weyrich. You know, knock, knock, knock. Oh, it's the Paul Weyrich. I didn't know he lived in my district. The things you learn going door to door. And he was very ill before he passed away. And I saw him out July 3rd, 2007. 7, not 8. And we had a conversation about the presidential race at that time. Now, mind you, if you remember back then, McCain was done, right, because of his immigration, you know, partnership with the president, where the president got that horribly wrong. He was just done, toast, out of the picture. One thing McCain's got is perseverance, I will say that. But on July 3rd, 2007, Paul Weyrich said, you know, I've been involved in this for 40 plus years. And I'm here to tell you, no Republican, I don't care who it is going to win the White House next year. Short of something totally, you know, out of the picture, like a terrorist attack right on the verge of the election that throws all the calculations out the door, that kind of thing. And he said, because they have abandoned what should be the foundation of the Republican Party, and the foundation of the Republican Party is not going to show up. They're not going to show up. And they didn't show up. You know, in Watergate, the Watergate election in '74, Republicans had their worst wipeout ever. But you know what's really interesting is no more Democrats showed up than usual that year. 10% of Republicans stayed home, and it was the biggest wipeout in congressional history. Our folks, and by our folks, I mean people who share a concern for these founding principles with us. I don't mean Republicans, I don't mean conservatives, I mean people who want to preserve the founding principles of this country. Don't come vote against us. They don't come. That's the difference. That makes the difference in elections. As someone who's won in a recount, I have a great appreciation for that. In 1991, I lived in the House of Delegates district decided by one vote. One vote. Now, mind you, I think the Democrats were cheating because on election night, we won by 16. And the ballots were not secured overnight. And the next day, they found 17 errors in the hand counting of 270 absentee ballots, all in one direction. Now, I was an engineer before I was a lawyer. I've taken some statistics. Anybody who wants to do the math on the odds of 17 errors in one direction, you know, you're gonna get up with a lot of zeros there. So I tend to think if we'd been up by 17 on election night, they'd have found 18 errors. But nonetheless, that's how close. You know, if you leave it that close, you can let them take it. We've got to not just win, we've got to make a statement here to America this year by winning as big as we can. If we sweep for the second time ever, there'll be a lot of blue dogs who aren't going to vote for that health care plan. There are going to be a lot of good candidates, Republican candidates across this country who have sat back, and people have been trying to recruit them to run, and I'm talking in every state in the country, who will say, this is the year, I'm going to go do it. And you'll see a full court press across this country in 2010 if we can get them started in 2009.